My name is David Walker, and I have always been fascinated by the exploration of underground caves. My parents, renowned archaeologists, instilled in me a love for history and the mysteries of ancient times. One day, among the extensive stories of explorers, I heard about the deepest cave that no one had ever been able to fully explore. It was a place surrounded by mystique and enigmas, perfect for someone like me seeking adventure and ancient secrets. Ignoring the warnings of the locals about the mysterious forces residing in this cave, I boldly set out on this thrilling journey. Equipped with flashlights, maps, and a radio communicator, I ventured deep into the depths, overcoming one obstacle after another. The light from my flashlights revealed the stunning beauty of the cave. Stalactites and stalagmites adorned the walls, creating whimsical shapes and reflecting in underground lakes. The eerie glow of fireflies, flickering like stars in the darkness, added even more mystery to the cave. However, the further I advanced, the stranger the surrounding sounds became. The rustle of leaves in the wind mixed with an incomprehensible whisper, as if something was discussing my fate. But the most astonishing was the voice echoing from the abyss indistinct, as if calling me, promising secrets that should never be revealed. Despite not being superstitious, I tried to convince myself that all these sounds were merely echoes and tricks of light in the rocks. Yet with each step, I felt someone or something was watching me. At times, I caught glimpses of shadows or heard peculiar rustlings, but when I turned, there was nothing to be seen, only dark corridors filled with shadows. My nerves were on edge, and I hastened my pace, feeling the urgency to escape from this place as soon as possible. My flashlights illuminated the walls, on which ancient symbols resembling runes were carved. They appeared cryptic and ominous, as if warning about the dangers concealed within the cave. Desperately trying to find an exit, I became lost amidst this array of symbols, unsure of their meanings. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet trembled, and I fell into a pit. My heart raced with fear, and the pain from my bruises momentarily left me speechless. I looked around. It was a deep pit, and getting out of it was not easy. Attempting to use the radio communicator to call for help, I encountered a new horror. It wasn't working. I was left alone with this dark entity, and I felt that it was closer than ever. Trying to collect my thoughts, I continued my journey, and the voice from the abyss became more distinct. It promised me knowledge and power over the world in exchange for my soul. I refused, understanding that these promises were mere illusions, manipulations of the mind. But the voice grew more insistent, cursing me and spitefully whispering about. I lost track of time during my stay in this cave. Time lost its meaning, and I felt my consciousness clouding, my mind filled with doubt. The cave was a living entity, hungry for human souls, as I realized, and I had fallen into a trap of inevitable nocturnal loss. Part of me wanted to surrender, to let this dark entity take my soul, just to end it. But I remembered my parents and their legacy. They explored the mysteries of history to enlighten the world. I couldn't betray them or my own essence. Gathering all the strength I had left, I covered my ears with my hands, refusing to listen to the seductive promises of the voice. Again and again, the voice tried to penetrate my mind, but I resisted. Vague images of the past and present flashed before my eyes, as if trying to detach me from reality. But I held on, fighting against the forces of this ominous cave. And then, when I felt my strength waning, my will on the verge of breaking, I heard another sound, faint, as if a distant call, but it gave me renewed determination. It was the voice of my parents, as if supporting me in this lonely battle. Focusing on that voice, I shut out the rest and managed to penetrate the essence of the cave. I realized that the voice from the abyss was not a benevolent entity but rather a creation of the dark forces within the cave itself. Its purpose was to feed on human souls, drawing them into its depths. With newfound strength, I began to walk in the opposite direction, against the voice that now cursed me and malevolently whispered about the horrors that awaited me. Each step was a trial, but I carried on with resolve, guided by my convictions. Finally, I saw the light. The exit from the cave was before me, but I knew that this was not the end of my journey. These sinister forces would guard their secrets, and I must find ways to stop their influence on the world. I emerged to the surface and returned to the real world, where much more time had passed than I expected. The locals were astonished at my return, as many never returned from those dark depths. With my discoveries and completed journey, I wrote a report warning people of the dangers of this cave and the entity hiding in its depths. My research was hailed as a cornerstone in understanding the mysteries of history. However, the memory of this journey will always live within me. It showed me that the world is filled with countless enigmas, and not all of them should be unraveled. But courage and determination will help us withstand the darkness and preserve our humanity, despite all the temptations that lurk on the path to knowledge and understanding of the war.
Story 2 by Elizabeth Morgan.
Elizabeth Morgan, a young woman with bright blue eyes and an eternal thirst for adventure, had always been a true connoisseur of mysteries and mystical stories. One summer evening, while sitting around a campfire with friends, she heard a strange tale about an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town. Rumors had it that something mysterious dwelled inside, and some even claimed it was the ghosts of long-deceased inhabitants. Enthralled by the story, Elizabeth decided to explore the mansion herself. After all, what could be better than taking a risk for an exhilarating adventure and possibly uncovering a long-awaited mystical secret? Under the cover of night, she set off on her journey. The moon illuminated the path to the abandoned mansion, and amidst the trees, Elizabeth noticed a strange, dark shadow gliding among the trunks. Her heart clenched with an inexplicable fear, but her curiosity outweighed it. Approaching the mansion, Elizabeth took a deep breath. The building looked old and abandoned, as if it harbored the secrets of countless past lives. Inside, it was dark and gloomy, and the air carried the scent of old mildew. Carefully, Elizabeth stepped through the corridors, surveying her surroundings. Antique objects and furniture seemed forgotten by time. Everything in this place felt both alive and dead, as if the mansion itself was cursed by the shadows of its past. As time passed, the sounds and muffled noises inside the building grew louder, and Elizabeth felt she was being watched. Her bravery waned, and she turned at every rustle, as if lurking eyes observed her from the darkness. Suddenly, she heard a whisper, "You shouldn't be here." The voice was hoarse and sinister, as if a ghost was warning her of something dreadful. In a fleeting moment, figures from the past emerged from the darkness, shadows of long-deceased inhabitants of the house. Elizabeth's courage failed her, and she decided it was time to leave. However, her attempts to escape were futile. The doors slammed shut on their own, leaving her trapped inside this forgotten dungeon. In a panic, she rushed to the door, but the lock seemed magically sealed, as if the building itself intended to keep its new victim. Realizing that she might have to remain in this gloomy place indefinitely, Elizabeth resolved to explore the mansion until an opportunity to escape presented itself. Her heart raced, and she tried to contain her fear, but all attempts at composure proved futile. One night, which seemed to stretch into eternity, Elizabeth heard strange footsteps. They drew nearer, and she couldn't control her heartbeat. Her feet led her to an old staircase that led to the upper floor. Upstairs, in one of the rooms, she saw an eerie shadow slowly approaching her. Cautiously, Elizabeth ascended to the upper floor, her mind filled with questions and fear. Yet, she felt that the shadow carried something more than just danger. The shadow appeared lost and lonely, imprisoned in this house just like she was. The shadow halted before Elizabeth, and she felt a strange connection, as if an invisible thread linked their souls. The shadow's eyes were filled with sorrow and bitterness, and it began to speak to Elizabeth. "I have lost my way," the shadow said. "I have been wandering in darkness for years, seeking an escape. But now, you are here, and I see my chance for freedom. The shadow told Elizabeth about the Mansion-S past, about the horrifying events that took place here decades ago. It turned out that it was the soul of a woman whose life had been devoid of joy and light. Her bitter fate was sealed when she became the victim of a dark ritual that trapped her soul within the Mansion-S walls. The shadow sought a way to break free, and Elizabeth realized that her own arrival in this place was not merely coincidental. She had been chosen by the shadow as a means of liberation. But could they both find freedom, or would the mansion keep Elizabeth captive for as long as it had kept the others before her? Elizabeth faced a choice, to stay and help the shadow or to try to escape from this ominous place. She knew her decision might lead to unforeseen consequences, but her heart told her otherwise. She chose to help the shadow. She felt a deep compassion for this lost soul, seeking salvation for so many years. With courage and determination, she informed the shadow that she was willing to aid in its escape. The shadow smiled, and its eyes flickered with a faint light. In that moment, it transported Elizabeth to the past, allowing her to witness the horrors that had occurred here long ago. Elizabeth learned about the sacrifices made in dark rituals and the suffering souls born within the Mansion-S walls. Elizabeth realized that the shadow needed a strong light to break the bonds that tethered it to this place. She resolved to help the shadow find the source of light. Together, they ventured into the deepest parts of the mansion, overcoming obstacles and fears. Finally, they discovered a long-forgotten room, where an old scroll lay on a dusty table. The scroll contained ancient magical incantations that could free the shadow. With determination, Elizabeth began to recite the incantation. In that instant, the room filled with a bright light that dispersed the darkness and the shadows that had held the soul captive all those years. The shadow was freed from its chains and began to emit a radiant glow.
Story 3 by Sarah Martinez.
My story began a few months ago when I, Sarah Martinez, a journalist and skeptic, heard about the cursed house on the hill. Always fascinated by mysterious stories, I couldn't resist the temptation to investigate its history further. I delved into old records and archives to learn as much as I could about the mysterious Hollister house. The Hollister family had lived in this house for several generations, and their fate was strangely intertwined with this ominous place. Each of the house's owners had died in agonizing suffering, and after each tragedy, the house remained locked up for years, as if its abandoned rooms held grim secrets. The locals called it the House of the Curse and believed that sinister forces inhabited its walls, forever thirsting for new victims. The story told of those who dared to enter the house, disappearing without a trace, as if consumed by its abyss. My rational thinking resisted the belief in the supernatural, and I tried to explain the entire legend as folklore and superstition. Nevertheless, inside me, there lingered curiosity and a thirst to verify the truth of these tales. One day, as the sun disappeared behind the horizon and the sky split between shades of purple and black, I set out for the hill where the cursed house stood. The path to it was difficult, overgrown with dense bushes and covered in a thick layer of moss. The wind pierced through me like a warning of danger. The house, seemingly awaiting its next victim, stood before me. It was in ruins, its walls covered in lichen, and its windows boarded up with planks. Looking at it sent shivers down my spine, but I pressed forward, ignoring the fear that began to envelop me. Entering inside, I felt a cold gust of wind as if the house breathed and awaited its next prey. Dim light seeped through dusty windows, and I heard faint footsteps trailing behind me. My heart raced, but I resolved not to let fear control me. Climbing to the upper floor, the doors slammed shut with a deafening noise, and I realized I was locked inside this cursed house. Darkness enveloped me, and an inner voice screamed at me to escape, but I held myself together and continued my exploration. Then, something strange happened. I heard voices whispering from all directions, as if they came to life from the past. They were the voices of those who perished in this house. They whispered terrible predictions about my death, as if demons lurking in the shadows rejoiced at their new victim. My hand trembled as I tried to call for rescue on my phone, but it slipped from my grasp and shattered into pieces. A sense of desperation and isolation engulfed me, and I realized I had fallen into a trap of supernatural forces. My mind began to descend into the abyss of madness, and I couldn't shake off the horrifying images they painted in my head. Everything around me seemed so unreal, as if I had entered a parallel world ruled by darkness and fear. I screamed, but my cries only echoed back, as if the house on the hill devoured them, denying me even the slightest chance of escape. Inside me, a flicker of hope remained that I might find a way out of this nightmarish trap, but fear and hopelessness paralyzed my actions. So, my story ended. I became another lost knight, a captive of the cursed house on the hill. They never found my body, and my disappearance became a new chapter in the legend of the Hollister house. Thus, my story concluded, or am I still alive, carrying within me dark memories of the cursed house on the hill? I don't know. My fate became part of a grim legend, and perhaps someone else will attempt to unravel the mystery of this house. But be cautious, for dark forces may grow stronger than your beliefs, drawing you into their bottomless depths.